Back in 2013, when the internet was really starting to boom, not everyone owned a computer like the way it is today. It was common to see net cafes near schools, and groups of friends would go play video games and hang out at these places after class. Despite most people only visiting a few times per week, they would notice a strange man with long hair wearing the same brown shirt sitting quietly in the same corner spot every time. Many of you have probably played video games before, and it's hard not to notice those players who grind day and night just to be on the leaderboards. We often joke about those people not having a life, but the guy I'm gonna talk about today takes it to a whole new level. We'll refer to him as Alex. For 4 years, he barely left his gaming chair. The only time he got up was to grab food. He would get a haircut once or twice a year and basically never showered or washed his clothes. It was estimated that he had a total online time of 22,000 hours in the span of 4 years. In other words, he spent 2.5 years out of his 4 years sitting in front of a computer. The reason why we get to hear this story today is because he became so famous for his extreme lifestyle that people started visiting the net cafe just to see him. Media outlets across the nation rushed to report his story. So who is Alex? And how did he end up living in a net cafe? Alex was born in 1984 in Hebei province, China. He grew up with a younger brother and was always the obedient son, following his parents' plans without question. His parents were very strict, but with their high standards, it paid off. Alex was a standout student in their small village. In 2004, he scored an impressive 647 out of 750 points on China's notoriously difficult college entrance exam. Let me put that into perspective for you. With so much content being tested, the exam was carried out in a span of 4 days. It covers everything from math, English, and Chinese to chemistry, physics, and biology. To score high, you not only need to be a gifted person, but you also need to be extremely hardworking. Even in 2017, out of every 100,000 students who took the exam, only 25 scored 650 or higher. That's just 0.25%. A score like Alex could have gotten him into most top universities in China, promising a bright future. So how did someone with such a promising start decide to abandon everything and move into a net cafe? Let's find out. The story begins when Alex first started his college life. He was suddenly free to do what he wanted, which was new for him because up until then, everything was about pleasing his parents. He didn't even get to choose his own major and was forced to pick computer science when he really liked chemistry. Due to this, he didn't quite take interest in any of his studies and was just meeting the bare minimums in school. Then, in his second year, everything changed. Alex was introduced to a video game called World of Warcraft. He'd never been into video games before, but his buddies got him into it. The game blew him away with its cool graphics and intense challenges. It quickly became more than just a game. It was his new obsession. Now, World of Warcraft isn't just any game. It takes serious skill and some real outside-the-box thinking. And surprisingly, Alex was really good at the game. One night, he led his guild in the game and cleared a level that most people spend months trying to beat. And they nailed it on their first try. Everyone at the net cafe was blown away, and just like that, Alex started becoming something of a legend among the gamers. As his reputation in the game world soared, his grades started to do the exact opposite. Alex was skipping more and more classes, totally caught up in his gaming life. Deep down, he knew he was messing up, but he felt stuck. Facing his parents and admitting that he drifted so far from their plans seemed impossible. So he just kept gaming, sinking deeper into the world where he felt he belonged. Due to his failing grades, Alex didn't manage to graduate. In 2008, he left his university without a degree, but lied to his parents that he had graduated successfully and was now looking for a job. In reality, he was broke and unable to afford rent, so he headed back to the similar spot, the net cafe, and tried to find a job online. But there was a catch. Every job he looked at wanted to see a graduation certificate, which he was unable to provide. Stuck and not sure what to do, he kept procrastinating and escaping the reality he couldn't face. Day after day and months after months. No money, no plans. His life was a total mess. Out of options, he started selling his in-game items and even played games for other people for cash. Surprisingly, it was enough to cover his meals and keep him locked in at the net cafe. The last real connection Alex had was with his in-game guildmates. They even talked about meeting up in Beijing one day, but then something seemingly small blew everything up. After a tough battle, they beat a boss that dropped a super rare item. Everyone felt like they deserved it because they all put in the work. This tiny thing sparked a huge online fight, And just like that, the argument got so bad they ended up disbanding the entire guild. And get this, Alex was so caught up in the game that he even forgot to pay his phone bills. After months of not paying, his mobile provider cut off his service. And just like that, he was totally cut off from everyone. No one could reach him anymore. As he was drifting through his days, Alex actually made a new friend online. This guy was even more hardcore, practically living in the game, only sleeping when he absolutely had to, sometimes even passing out mid-conversation during their voice calls. I guess similar as a track, right? They became tight online buddies. Both of them knew that they were the same type of people who were just trying to escape their responsibilities, but they would pretend not to know a thing and never brought up the topic for a conversation. But then, around Chinese New Year 2013, his friend vanished for a while. When he finally came back online, he dropped a message to Alex. "I went home. Your parents must really miss you as well. You should go home too." Just like that, something clicked for Alex. He started to see that he needed to face up to things. He felt so ashamed, thinking his parents would never forgive him. He wanted to restart but didn't know where to begin or have the gut to even make the first move. Deep down, he was praying for someone to help pull him out of this mess. He was watching his life crumble right in front of his eyes and couldn't really do much about it. But maybe God actually heard his prayer, as he had a strong desire to change for good. Something incredible happened one morning in March of the same year. Two guys came over to the net cafe and went straight to the seat in the corner. Alex was still sleeping. When he woke up, the two guys slowly handed him a newspaper. Even though his eyes were blurry from just waking up, it was hard not to notice himself on the newspaper headline. It turns out that his story had become so famous that it was making headlines all across China. If you were put in his place, you probably would feel very embarrassed at the moment, and even panic as you realize not only your family, but all your friends now know what you have been up to. However, Alex was actually happy to see this. He actually really missed his parents and always wanted to go home, but just never had the courage to do so. All he really needed was a push. And with this news report, it left him with no choice but to go home and give them a proper explanation regardless of what happens next. Just 1 week later, Alex's brother and uncle showed up at the net cafe. With a calm voice and no sign of anger, his uncle approached and simply said, "Let's go home." Those were the words Alex had been longing to hear for 4 long years. Overwhelmed, he burst into tears and hugged his uncle. He then packed up his stuff, shut down the computer, and walked out with them. Together, they hopped on the train back to their village. Sitting there, Alex couldn't help but smile, genuinely happy for the first time since he first stepped in the net cafe. When they got home, there was no anger waiting for him. His parents, his whole family were just relieved. They were all incredibly thankful he was safe and alive. For 4 years, he didn't send a single message home, but now he was back, and that's all that mattered to them. 3 months later, Alex was ready to make a real change. He left home once again, this time to find a legitimate job. He was mentally prepared to start from a very low point, but that was more than enough for someone like him. In June of the same year, he landed an interview at an IT company. On his resume, he wrote honestly, "Left university in 2008, played video games for a living until now." Maybe it was for his honesty, or maybe God was on his side. Another company took a chance on him as he worked as an intern. In just a few months, he was hired full-time. A few years down the line, he worked his way up to manager. And by 2019, Alex's career had really taken off. He even got married, and now he's living a happy life. If you found this story to be inspirational, share it with someone who needs a little hope. Maybe they too, like Alex, just needed one little push.